Hey again, it's Robin, your friendly neighborhood former charter review commissioner. I'm gonna start us off with some level setting, remind us how we got here. It was a quick 2-year sprint. I wanna shout out the Harvard Ash Center led by our MED advisory committee member, Nick Chedley Carter in the corner there, laptop. He and his team did a great synopsis, a short, good read on what happened in Portland, some of the dynamics. I would check it out if you're thinking about what lessons you can draw for your local community. We'll go next slide. So take us back to November 8th, 2022. The voters of Portland overwhelmingly passed charter reform, right? The first time, or this was actually the 9th time they voted on some sort of charter reform. The first 8 failed. We got it done, 58%. The very next day, so on this right side, they hold a press conference saying, oh, our mandate is this has to be live in time for the next election, right? This past November, and the government has to be formed and up, a few months ago, January 2025, right? I know we have some former city managers in the crowd, and they're like, "That's a very short timeline," So it was a sprint, right? But we did it well, as I think a result of our elections can prove. Next slide. So yeah, what were the changes, right? So there were many, but to break it down, there were some core key changes, right? So for one, we went from only voting for one candidate, right, as many people do, to being able to use ranked choice voting to elect multiple people per district. So here in Portland, we have 4 districts, 3 members each, right? So we have a multi-member district, multiple people, and a proportional ballot, which just looks like, right, like you're bubbling in your first choice, second choice, third choice, but your vote carries all the way through, all your preferences. So that's a key one, right? That's the voter experience. We used to have citywide elections, right, at large, which meant the same kind of dominant majority, folks with connections to wealth, or maybe the parts of the city that always had a say, they would choose the winners every single time. We moved to having geographic districts to ensure representation for all parts of the city, right? Everyone can now know that they have a city council elected that reasonably understands their life in their neighborhood, right? Far more than we had previously. As a note, we're on the west side here, west of the river, where downtown is. That makes up about 20% of the city's population, but they held 80% of the power throughout history in the city council, right? That wasn't fair. And then for the government side, right, the way in which we elect our officials has a huge impact on how they govern, how they make decisions once they're there to represent the people. We moved from the only big city that had this commission form of government since 1913, which you had, I don't belabor it, but you had like mini mayors and a lot of politics and no real good work, to now we have a executive mayor, city council is the legislative body, and we have professional city manager to help professionally manage a 21st century city. Yeah, so next slide. There were, we had many things had to be built, right? So we went from never thinking about districts or at the city level to we have to create lines, right? And we all know like that's the potential for gerrymandering, right? That's what we want to avoid. So what we had was a independent, we can go next slide. Oh, actually, so this is an example ballot. So imagine names, but this is what it looked like. And in Portland, we could rank up to 6 candidates, right? You could use as many as you wanted, up to 6. Next slide. Okay, so we had an independent redistricting commission that was applied for and appointed similar to our charter review commission. So they had full powers to decide. Elected politicians had no say in this. Yeah, I say it's gerrymander proof because you're only drawing 3 lines, and the districts are sizable population. It's very hard to rig, in my opinion. And the maps that were generated had a lot of public input, and they were widely accepted. I don't think there was a single kind of contestation about them, if that makes sense, right? Like they were not a story at all accepted. So that's cool. If you like that, consider independent redistricting and multi-member districts, right? We had an independent salary commission. So these are additional changes that I think really speak to when we think about what barriers we have to lower or open up to have a stronger democracy, we can't forget about these, right? So we had an independent salary commission that would set the pay and benefits for our elected leaders, right? To make sure it was a living wage that, all people, if they wanted to step up and put their name forward to be elected, that they could afford to serve. And it wasn't just a privilege for the wealthiest, right? So that was really key. In Portland, we had also, community members that had some like HR compensation background. They volunteered, and they used a metric that was like, what would it cost for a single parent in Portland with one child to have a thriving wage, right? And that's what they earmarked and came up with pay. We had city-funded voter education and outreach. You heard from Julia last night at the panel, right, about how the city was trying to navigate how to be, nonpartisan about it, but really it's important that we educate the people about this system that we voted for, right? And the first time you do anything, you might need more help, right? So that was really key. That was a budget battle, but it's so essential that, we fund that effort, right? We can change the system overnight, but we can't change the underlying disadvantages, right? The folks who've already been told they don't belong in our politics for decades, right? So we made that investment. We also had small donors, public financing, meaning that, any Portlanders donation would be matched. So we here had, if you gave $5, the city would match it 9-to-1, become $50. That made it so possible for so many more candidates to campaign, right, and get their voice heard. And we had an incredibly low barrier for entry for candidates. Like everyone and their mom was running for city council. We had, which I think is a good thing, rather than being presented two choices that are basically maybe the same, right? Like we had over 100 candidates across the 14 seats, and like every type of Portlander almost, I would say, right? Yeah. So those are other important changes to not lose sight of. And yeah, we were really trying to think really holistic about this. Next slide. Yeah, and then, who was we that designed this, for better or for worse, it was 20 of us, represented, each geographic part of the city, demographically aligned with Portland. We, had independent power as well as a charter commission, right? So on first draft, after like 15 months, we actually had 20 out of 20 voting in favor of the package. At the end vote was 17 out of 20. 3 people lost their way over a few months. That's okay, right? But 20 out of 20 heard this plan and voted to move it forward for public discussion. So, and we were like, we did not know each other. We did not know each other. We didn't have preconceived notions going into it. Yeah, and it was great to do community engagement, and it's great to have a bigger mandate than elected politicians. We were more popular than them, so that made it easier for people to talk to us. Next slide. Yeah, and then by the numbers, I guess numbers that but this slide is to show you we tried very, very hard to talk to as many people as possible in every setting possible. We wrote reports, we did media, did radio, did TV, like between the 20 of us, I know some of us in the room, like we would go to every, church basement, to like classroom, to library, to give a presentation to whomever wanted to hear and give their feedback. We were really proud of that effort. I think it was, safe to say, like historically the most community outreach project that Portland had ever done. And I think we were really proud of that. I think that shows in the results and how people are, good with the system, strong with it. Next slide. Yeah, I talked about this at length last night, but there was the reasons for wanting change. People were open to hearing, open for not just like what would be different, but like what would create a city that you could be proud to live in, right? That you felt good, that you felt seen and heard by your government, by your neighbors, right? Like that was really, and you'll hear from other speakers today, like Becca, giving the keynote, just like what were the core values that we were trying to talk about politics in our city under for that 2-year period. I think that was great. Next slide. Yeah, so for context, this is a map of Portland. I kept this in because I think it's really demonstrates the problem we were dealing with, the problem we still deal with, but we have better systems now to address it. So this map the heat map tells you, so the lighter the color are the neighborhoods that got their way in the election each time, if that makes sense, right? So these are, how, these like, official neighborhood dimensions, right? You can kind of see they kind of look like precincts, right? So the dark orange on the eastern part of the city, those people, those neighborhoods only got 0 or 1 person that area voted for in a majority ever elected to the city council in the last, like 20 years of elections, right? So you can clearly see who gets their way in the city and who never gets their way in the city, right? Right? It was very clear. So we're on the west side here, towards the white color, and they would always get their way. And that what does that do to a city, right? You just know that, hey, if you live east of that highway, you don't pick the winner, and the winner doesn't look at you, right? If you're not a part of the winning team, that's not their incentive. We know that as a system, right, of elections, for better, for worse, right? Yeah, so this was something that we kept in mind, and then we created a system, which we'll talk more about, of what could structurally change this, what could give us an opportunity. Next slide. Yes, and it's because this map too. We love maps. Thanks Moon for this map. One thing that was convincing to a lot of people to think about our city was, I said it yesterday, like if we tried, if we legally could just gerrymander the shit out of the city, just to try to this is an example of what if we tried to create the most people of color district. We literally couldn't get it done. We don't have segregation racially in the city in that way to achieve a majority minority district, right? And we could prove that through our census data, and we were doing this right after the census, so it was fresh data about our city. Yeah, so these are all the kind of signal points for why the conversations from people who had no idea about proportional representation, why we drifted towards, okay, this is a system that seems to try to meet the needs of what we're trying to change. And I think that's the last slide. Yeah, and this is the last slide. So we talked about systems. I know we'll talk more about elections. There was also, with one election cycle, a real different feeling of elections themselves, right? How you experience them, how campaigns operated, how candidates spoke. Those all changed too. So if you don't like the way your politics plays out in your local community, what the messages are or how it interacts, I think we clearly did feel some differences, and some of us have written about it. Fair Vote helped sponsor an article. We have local journalists that you'll hear from today who also have to try to capture this. So, right, if you want politics to have different outcomes, and you want a different system, and you actually want the experience of politics to maybe be a little more enjoyable, I think we felt that here in Portland. So thank you. Yeah, that was a quick recap in 15 minutes of what happened here over the last 2 years. And I am introducing our keynote and fellow former charter commissioner. So Becca Uurbelau has more than 25 years of experience leading strategy and operations in civic engagement, electoral politics, and movement building spaces. She has worked in public service for local and state government, led electoral and community-based nonprofits, and directed statewide ballot measures, local issues, and candidate campaigns. She is currently the executive director of the Oregon Donor Alliance. Becca has also served as the director of equity and racial justice for Oregon's governor and led Our Oregon, a social and economic justice coalition with a focus on elections and ballot measures. She's done it all. She knows a lot. She has prioritized racial equity and building community power in all of her leadership positions, including her time in the Multnomah County Chair's Office and leading inclusive community engagement in our metro regional government. Please welcome to the stage our friend, Becca Uurbelau.